Until now I have known durum wheat flour more from pasta or as flour I roll my pizza in. Today we change it and we bake a durum wheat sourdough bread. What a lovely day to bake. Moin, my name is Arne, German hobby baker who's living in Luxembourg. In Germany we use durum wheat mainly as semolina, so a little cursor to make knödels with it. And as for pasta, we also use it. So I was curious how it behaves in bread. I decided to make a cooked piece which is called Tangzhong in Japanese. This allows to add more water to the dough and the bread stays fresh for longer. Since I do not know anything about the properties of this flour, I have added a little all-purpose flour. This leads to a bread with an open crumb which keeps fresh for several days and which has a wonderful aroma and a hint of cinnamon. So let's get started. This is from Luxembourg with Loaf.
The evening before we bake, we create our Tangzhong or cooking piece, and we do that by adding 99 grams of water into a pot, and then we add 33 grams of durum wheat as well as 14 grams of salt. So we already bind the salt. We heat that up until you get that thick paste of flour and water, and this will now filled into a glass. I will cover that later, and this will go into the fridge overnight. And then it's time to create our levain. First of all, I discard some old sourdough starter so that I have around 5 grams starter left. Then I add 30 grams of water as well as 50 grams of durum wheat. Then I'm using a spoon and mix everything together. Once everything is combined, I'm using my hand to flatten the levain a bit so that I can see better how much it has been raised overnight. I'm using a rubber band to mark the height, and this will stay on my countertop overnight at room temperature. At the next morning, it's time to first have a look at our starter. It really looks good, so it has more than doubled. And the Tangzhong is also ready to be used. For this recipe, we are needing 250 grams of all-purpose flour as well as 150 grams of durum wheat. And you see it's a little bit more yellow than the normal flour. We are also needing 20 grams of olive oil as well as 300 grams of water. And I have replaced some water with ice cubes because it's a warm day and I'm using the kitchen machine. So first of all, we start adding the water into our mixing bowl, and then we add the different flours as well. And then it's time to add our levain, or stiff starter, or whatever you want to call it. And then we add the Tangzhong or cooking piece as well. And then it's time to start the engine of our mixer, and this will be mixed for about 10 minutes at a low speed. I'm slightly increasing the speed, and then after 10 minutes it's time to go to the double amount of speed, and then it's time to add the olive oil. And yes, we haven't forgotten about the salt. The salt we already integrated into our cooking piece. After another 5 minutes, it's time to check with the window pane test the dough. That looks good, so we put the dough onto our countertop, where I'm using a dough scraper to form it into a nice shaped ball. I've put some oil into a glass container to prevent the dough later from sticking. And then I place the dough into that glass container. And then I'm covering it with some plastic wrap. After 30 minutes, it's time to do some coil folds. And before I'm doing that, I'm spraying some water on my hands to prevent the dough from sticking to it. And then I'm pulling the dough up and folding it over before I rotate the glass container. Then I'm covering the dough again, and this will rest for another 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, I'm doing some coil folds again, so that will be our second set. So the dough is now less sticky, so that's a good sign. We have enough gluten development there. We do the same thing for a third time, again after 30 minutes. And then another time after 30 minutes. This will be the last set before the dough has some hours to ferment properly.
While we're waiting for the sourdough to ferment the dough, please take a moment and like this video, subscribe to my channel and enable notifications so you don't miss my next videos. Thanks!
The dough has now fermented for 2 to 3 hours. If it's a cold day, then let it ferment a little bit longer until it's about 80% of the height as before. So it's time to dump now the dough onto our countertop, and now we're using a technique that make a really rustic oven spring. So we can also flour the top a bit, and then we pull the dough from the sides to the middle. And then we tuck it in a little bit with our finger to put some pressure on it so that it won't unwind. Probably already in this state I could have put the dough into our banneton, but I decided to get some more tension to the dough ball. So I'm pulling the dough towards my body with my fingers. Then I put some flour in my banneton and place the dough not upside down. I place it with the rustic side down. Yes, you heard right. This time we place the dough differently than all the other times. This gets covered in the fridge until the next morning before it's time to be baked. I've preheated the oven to 250 degrees Celsius. That's 482 degrees Fahrenheit, and I will dump the bread into my cast iron pan by flipping it upside down. And then I'm closing the cast iron pan and spray with a water sprayer some steam in it before closing it. This will be baked for about 20 minutes at 250 degrees Celsius, and then I uncover the lid and look at this nice rustic crust. This will be baked for another 25 minutes at 220 degrees Celsius. That's 428 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it can cool for some time. And look at this beautiful rustic crust. Sound is good. And now, after cooling down, let's have a look at the crumb. Wow, what a beautiful open crumb, and that nice yellow color. So here are some more pictures to enjoy the bread from all sides. As always, bon appetit and enjoy!
I hope you enjoyed the video. I will use a technique to fold the loaf a little bit more often now. The rustic crust really has something. Next time I will definitely use more of the durum wheat flour. The yellow color and the cinnamon scent are really wonderful. If you bake the bread yourself, then leave me a comment and link me on Instagram. I'm curious about your results. See you next time, Eddie, and goodbye.